Hello everyone. Today we are together, this time for the last tense in English language, and that is future perfect continuous tense. With this tense, ladies and gentlemen, we finish our trophy for English tenses, and right after this we will pass on to models. For the time being, let's start. Okay, as usual, we are going to see some demonstrations on the timeline diagram for us to understand in an easier way how we can use future perfect tense properly. And we'll also talk about time expressions, positive, negative, and question forms. And finally, we're going to do some practice. I always say the same proverb, I know, but that is very important for me. It should be for you too. Practice makes perfect. All right, what for is future perfect tense used? It is used for talking about an ongoing action before some point in the future. Let me repeat that for you once more. For talking about an ongoing action before another point in the future. Let's try to understand it with an example. Here comes. I will have been studying English for 3 hours by the time my dad arrives. Let's see it on the timeline diagram. I will have been studying English for 3 hours. That's an ongoing activity. By the time my dad arrives. How can I understand that this part is in future perfect continuous? Because we have will have been studying, and time expression is also the time expression of future tense or future perfect continuous tense. And our format is will, or instead of will, to be going to, plus have been verb ing. It's our word format, verb ing. Here comes an example, together with a definition again, the same future perfect continuous tense. It is also used to emphasize the duration of some action that will be completed before some point in the future. Okay, let me attract your attention to emphasize the duration. So if I want to put forward the period of that activity, or the duration or the continuation of that activity, to emphasize that period or duration, I specifically use future perfect continuous tense. Let's try to explain it with an example. Here comes our example. By the end of this year, I will have been completing my graduation for 4 years. Here, I'd like to emphasize that my university or school is 4-year period. That's why I'm using future perfect continuous tense, to emphasize the duration of the activity. Here comes another example, another definition again. Future perfect continuous tense is also used for expressing cause cause of something. Here comes our example. When she goes to Britain next month, she will have been English for over 4 years, so she should be able to communicate fairly well. Where is the cause here? The cause here is so she should be able to communicate fairly well. So it is also used for expressing cause of something in the future. What do? I use future perfect continuous tense for such action. Here comes another example. She will have been sleeping for 6 hours before the alarm goes off. When does the alarm goes off? It goes off at 5, as you can see. Okay, and when will she start sleeping? At 11. So, as you can see, from 11 all the way down to 5, for 6 hours she will have been sleeping before the alarm goes off. So again, I use future perfect continuous tense for an ongoing action. For an ongoing action, here ongoing action is the sleeping for 6 hours before another point of an action in the future. Shall versus will. We talked about this in all of our 4 of the tenses in future, right? Future tense, simple future tense, future continuous tense, future perfect tense, and here it is, future perfect continuous tense. I use shall instead of will, with the exception of first person singular I and first person plural we. Let's see. I can use shall, in this case future perfect continuous, shall have been with I and we subjective pronouns, and will, as you can see, for all of the subjects plus verb ing. Let's read these 2 examples. I shall have been living in New York for 10 years by the end of this year. I can also say I will, but he will have been living in New York for 10 years by the end of this year. I cannot use shall instead of will, because shall we can use with first person singular and first person plural. No difference. There's no difference between these 2 helping verbs or models. Okay, some more examples. Here I'd like to show you the format. Will or shall have been verb ing. Let's read some different examples. By next March, we shall have been living here for 5 years. By the end of this year, he will have been acting for 30 years. As you can see, the structure will, shall have been verb ing. The wind will have been blowing fast for an hour, and boys will have been climbing on a mountain for 2 days. What are the 2 things that we should we should be careful about? Structure and time expressions for future perfect continuous tense. We always talk about action and non-action verbs. When? I cannot hear you. When? Yes, for continuous tenses. Jump, punch or shake. They are action verbs, but like, feel, want, these actions you cannot see. They are non-action verbs. Why do I need to know them? Which verb is non-action, which verb is an action verb? It's because I cannot use these non-action verbs, or also we call state verbs, in continuous form. Neither in present continuous, nor present perfect continuous, nor future perfect continuous. If there is a continuous verb in the structure of a tense in English language, I cannot use them in continuous form because they are non-action verbs or stated verbs. Here, I will have been knowing you for 10 years at our anniversary tomorrow. That doesn't sound right to me. Okay? Why? No is a stated word or non-action word. Here it is used in continuous form and it's wrong. It's not correct. Instead, I should say, I will have known you. As you can see, word 3 will have verb 3, not in a continuous form, not in a verb ing form, for 10 years at the anniversary tomorrow. Why? Because know is a state verb, and state verbs are not used in continuous form, as the ones below, there they are: understand, need, want, remember, like, know, mean, enjoy, prefer, see, are some of the non-action verbs which we cannot use in continuous form. Time words, time expressions, important. By the end of the year, by the end of the month, week, day, hour, morning, by the end of the evening, etc. For 3 years, by next month, for 2 hours, weeks, years, etc. In 2 years' time, I can also use. In 2 days' time, 2 weeks' time, I can also use for future perfect continuous tense time expression. How long, da 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 da, by this Tuesday is also possible to use for future perfect continuous as time expression. Let's see positive form. We will have been driving for 6 hours by the time we got home. Jill will be very tired when she comes home because she will have been flying for 24 hours. And by this time tomorrow, Christine will have been teaching for 5 years. Here you see the affirmative, the positive form, no negative, no question form, just positive affirmative sentence form is this. Let's see negative form. Well, basically we're just going to put not. I will not have been married for 10 years by the end of the next month. By midnight, she won't have been studying. Or I can also say she will not have been studying. She will have been out with her friends. And finally, I will not, or I won't have been studying English for 5 years until next June. Here comes the question form. How long will you have been driving by the time we got home? Basically, we pull will here towards to the beginning, to the head of the sentence, to make a question out of a positive form. Will we have been flying for 5 hours before we arrived to New York? Will you have been studying English for 3 hours by the time your father gets home? Another example, by the time he finishes medical school, becomes a doctor, he will have been living in Great Britain for 6 years. Let's see it on the timeline diagram. By the time, okay, he will have been living in Great Britain for 6 years. Okay, there's a continuous activity in the future before another activity in the future by the time he finishes medical school and become a doctor. Here, I'd like to attract your attention, even though we have two actions in the future, as you can see, this action in the future is in simple present tense, finishes medical school and becomes a doctor. Why? Even though it is in the future, I use with a conjunction, I use it in simple present tense with the meaning of future tense. But this action is in future perfect continuous tense plus simple present tense. Okay, here I intended to show you 1, 2, 3, 4 different English tenses in the same example. Here, in this way, I prepared that example for you to see the differences among these 4 tenses. Here comes our timeline diagram. Now is the time of speaking. I'm going to just say that example and future. I will have been studying on my homework for 2 hours when my dad arrives. Okay, let's see it on the timeline diagram. Here comes for 2 hours. It's the future, it's in the future, continuous, a period, a duration of an action, and is in future perfect continuous before another action. When my dad arrives, as you can see, when my dad arrives is in simple present form. Okay, let's see this time, instead of future perfect continuous, let's see that this sentence in future perfect tense, so that we can see the difference between future perfect continuous and future perfect. Here comes our example. I will have finished my homework. Can you see the action is at the end of a period when my dad arrives, present simple, and after that will be cooking dinner, another period in the future. That's a perfect example for us, ladies and gentlemen, to see the difference between future perfect continuous and future perfect. Future perfect continuous tense is used to emphasize the duration, but here it is used to emphasize the action at the end of the period. Okay? So future perfect continuous emphasizes the duration of an action. On the other hand, future perfect tense emphasizes the action itself, because it will have completed. Okay, let's do some practice as usual. This and we're going to fill in the blanks and use future perfect continuous. This show will have been ended at midnight. My family will have been eating turkey and potatoes for Thanksgiving. My teacher will have been giving us homework tonight. The plumber will have been fixing the sink in our kitchen. The workers will have been repairing the street over the summer. And finally, our favorite team will have been playing in the finals of the tournament. Okay, one more time, let's talk about the differences between future perfect and future perfect continuous, because it's a little complicated and confusing, I know. Here comes future perfect and future perfect continuous. For future perfect, we talk about actions that will be completed by a certain time in the future. On the other hand, future perfect continuous is used for actions which will be in progress. Can you see the difference? Will be completed for future perfect. Will be in progress for future perfect continuous tense. Here comes another one for future perfect. By the end of this month, I will have worked here for 10 years. Will be completed in the future. And for perfect continuous tense, he will have been working for 10 years here. Next September, you can clearly see that the action is in progress because of will have been verb ing. Okay, we talked about future perfect continuous tense by showing you some demonstrations on the timeline diagram. Talked about how to use this tense properly. Talked about time expressions, format, and did some practice. Thank you for listening.